I want to welcome Selavi to the In My Fields podcast. Selavi's a musician, a poet, an alchemist, has a dope blog called Aquarius Mood, which my wife is a huge fan of. A tarot card expert whose eyes are solely focused on Ascension. So how we usually start the show is thoughts, feelings, emotions, positivity, beliefs, negativity on the inside create your outside exterior. So my question for you is, how are you feeling right now in this moment?
I love that question. In this moment, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling kind of rejuvenated. I just got over a little bout of sickness. So this newfound health is like a revelation for me. Never been so grateful to just be healthy.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm energized. That's how I'm
Okay.
feeling.
I mean, I guess with, because I feel like I can go deeper with you because of the kind of things you represent. Would you say that health and the reason why you felt the way you were is because is the way you were feeling? Could you trace back the kind of,
Yeah,
okay.
actually. Funny enough, I was kind of going through it, like the Mercury retrograde that just passed. That was in Aquarius. Um, I was just going through it. And I didn't want to accept that I was going through it. I was very in denial the whole time. There's like a lot of resistance. I was like, no, I'm fine. No, I'm not in my feelings. No, I'm okay. But I was just having a lot of these reflections and like vivid dreams, and like my mind was running miles a minute. And I found myself in kind of this place of despair because actually about to move. So I'm like in a transitioning space. I'm moving closer. Well, I'm moving into the city of Toronto, basically. I'm like a couple towns out right now. Um, so I was just in this space of like, I want it now. Like, why can't I be there now? And just kind of like grappling with that kind of anxiety of it all and the anticipation of it all. And I found myself just being a lot more down tempo. Yeah. And I think that just kind of led my health even downwards too. Like I wasn't drinking my morning tea. Like things just became like off kilter all of a sudden. I like threw my routine out the window. I was like, no, I need a new routine. I need newness. Newness has to happen right now. So that definitely affected my health for
Yeah,
sure.
I think I've been a part of that right now too, is stepping out of the moment of awareness and living in the now.
Yeah.
It's if I sometimes think, especially me, I'm someone who's super aware of my feelings, my emotions, and I always talk about them. Like yesterday, I had an off day, and I spoke about it, sat down with my wife, and let it all out,
Mm.
and then woke up today just like great. And I'm
Yeah.
reading this book called Atomic Habits as well, which is trying to implement some positive habits which coincide with something that you probably see as negative. For
Mm.
example, now I've started. I try and live presently, but even in my schedule now, setting a reminder of that will pop up as an alarm, and this would be good for anyone who's listening. Of
Yeah.
just like something right now that you're appreciative for, and that puts you in the
Mm.
moment of now. Okay, well, I have to think about now what's going on, and that's kind of what I've been doing. Even like I've just started running again, and I used to love running and I've
Beautiful.
started since pretty much lockdown. I haven't run at all, and I've started running, and I've set times for my meditation. And the whole point of the Atomic Habit book is to basically, if you don't see it, it's very hard for you. So if you say to yourself, "I'm going to meditate at 10 a.m. today," and if it's not in front of you, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
But if you set a reminder or somewhere, then it's like, oh, you have to do it. And I think that's a perfect example
Yeah.
of you with your anxieties, and I think that's the reason why we feel the way we feel is because we fight those feelings instead of just being like, okay, I acknowledge you, you're there, it's
Yeah.
okay, you're not me, but I can feel it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a big believer of like setting those reminders. Like just as you said, I even got my partner on it. Because I was just like, your phone is a tool. Like you can use it to help you get where you need to go. It doesn't have to just be like social media or calling someone or texting or whatever it is. Like set that reminder and tell yourself like you are the greatest or whatever you need to hear, and set it at random times and keep it repeating like every week. And I always have this one at 5 p.m. because that's kind of like when I would get off work kind of idea at the time. it was, I'm grateful for. And I would just, it would pop up, and then I tell myself, okay, we have to say what we're grateful for today. And that just, it keeps you in that space of gratitude, which is like the highest vibration. And like, it's just so important. Like even Post-it notes, like I'll kind of like, you'll see things on my walls. Like I just keep those reminders going, because it's very easy to just fall to the wayside and like, and forget.
The creature of habit. That's what we are. That's what, you
Yeah.
know, and if we can break that over time, I think we'll become way more enlightened and more awareness even. I want to dive in because I mean, I've been trying to research this, like because you know when you sent me over topics to talk about the Age of Aquarius, and I've been aware of it, but I don't know it specifically. And there is a plethora of stuff. Has it happened? Is it coming? Has it already been? When is it? I mean, there's like a 200 different people giving opinions on when it is, and all. I'd love to know from you kind of your perspective of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of tapped into the Age of Aquarius, I would say maybe a couple years ago, just kind of hearing about it. And my point of view is that we go through these kind of consciousness cycles, basically, as a collective body, if you will, of humanity. And a lot of astrologers, they have their different theories, and it's really all up in the air for the most part, as astrology is too, because it's a collective science. So everyone's chiming in, and that's kind of the whole purpose of it. I've been reading this book, Ars Nova, The Age of Aquarius. Can probably pull it up at some point. But that's been a really enlightening book, because it's kind of putting together some of the Jungian theory and just some of the astrological kind of ancient history of like the previous ages of the Aries and the Pisces. And the main conjuncture is that these cycles happen approximately every 2100 years. So the great debate is kind of like, what year are we really in? Like, are we really in 2020? Like, we don't actually know what year we're really in. And when we think about all these different like cultures and religions, they celebrate their own new year. So everyone's kind of in their own year within the year that we're in today. So when I think about the Age of Aquarius, and when I come to explain it, I approach it as this consciousness shift of the mind. And what we're really seeing here now is a major shift, and what we've been seeing for a long time, since like people can say like maybe 2012 or what it is. We've been seeing this shift towards a more humanitarian kind of way of being for humanity, and a more community-based way of living and thinking. And that's really what the whole Age of Aquarius is about. It's about this consciousness shift of humanity being like, wait, we can't keep going like this. Something is changing within us, and we need to start moving in that direction. And we're seeing it. We're seeing communities getting stronger and forming and holding each other, especially during this time, especially during the pandemic. Everyone's kind of, looking for these different spaces to catch them, or to hold space for them. And that's really the major shift of what it's about. Astrologically speaking, it has a lot to do with like planetary placements and just like the grand universal time clock, if you will. And what we're seeing there is just a lot of movement and energy in the sign of Aquarius. And we had the great Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and a whole cluster right now. I think there's still like 4 planets. Venus just went into Pisces today, I think. And there's a whole cluster of planets in Aquarius. The Mercury retrogrades are going to all be in air signs this year, and it started in Aquarius. So there's a lot of focus just around the sign of Aquarius at the moment. And that's why I believe that it's happening now. If a lot of astrologers were like, slay me for this, but we are on the cusp, if you will, of the actual age of Aquarius. So we're shifting from that kind of illusionary dream state veil of Pisces into the now the more community oriented, humanitarian based ways of Aquarius. And it's a different, it's going to happen in different parts. I like to think of like the light and the shadow, and then we have like this true side of it. So right now we're still in like the shadow side of Aquarius, and the shadow side is really like that detached, like don't touch me, I don't feel anything, kind of weird, numb, like I love you but like don't come close kind of thing. And that's kind of like what the pandemic is right now. Like we're literally socially distancing. Everyone has this detached kind of demeanor from everything. They're like, I don't really want to get too involved, but I'm here for it, like I'll advocate. There's a lot of activism, revolutionary kind of thrusts and all this. So we're in that little shadow period, and that could last a good 10-ish, more-ish years. But that's how I believe it starts. We go from the shadow, then we get to like the light, bright, oh my God, everything's perfect, da, 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 and then we go into a balanced kind of state.
Yep. So, I mean, I guess, would it be correct to say the Aquarius is the house of the woman? The reason being because I read a French newspaper from 1890, and they said that we're in the age of Aquarius. And when you say it was in the shadows, because he stipulates, or the paper does, that it's the age of the woman who will become equal to the man. And when you're saying, we're in the shadow, it makes perfect sense with COVID and everything else, and how, the Me Too movement and everything else. And now men, which should have been done generations ago, are now understanding, women are obviously the equality between man and woman. And when I realized why it went wrong is because I think it's religious based. Religion understood that women are way more superior in terms of spirituality because they give birth to consciousness, they give birth to life. And I think they realize, that's why there's no female prophets. How can you trust any religion that doesn't have a female prophet? A Joan of Arc per se, even though she was burnt at the stake. So I mean, would it safe to say that I actually feel that we are coming into it? I mean, I don't know per se too much about it, but I'd love your expertise on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So to touch on like that book that I was reading, also they talk a lot about the Aquarian Immago, and that's kind of like there's the image and there's the Immago. So the image is kind of the visual representation of what we know the Aquarius kind of symbol to be, and then there's like the Immago of what the projected kind of the projected being or the projected energy of what Aquarius is. And there's actually two, and they, in the book, they kind of go between like which one is the real one. And we have this one where there's a male carrying the vase over his shoulder, very Greek mythology-esque kind of vibes of like, yeah, I got the water, I'm carrying this, I got all the answers kind of thing. And then there's the woman who pours the vase of water into another body of water. Who's kind of bent over the water and pouring. And that's the one that we actually go with more so. And that's the one that the authors in the book are leaning more towards, because they're like, this male figure is just another kind of representation of Greek mythological, patriarchal kind of projections. And the interesting thing about the actual Aquarius sign is that it's a masculine sign. So we have this female representation, but the sign itself is masculine. So what we're seeing is actual duality, a female that has the same qualities as a man, but is still a female and carries herself as such. And this also idea of like nourishment. Water is, in astrology, is really about like feelings and nourishing the earth and this connection to a more like ethereal source of being, a more fluid source of being. So there's a lot of interesting kind of symbologies attached to this Aquarian woman that's pouring back into Earth, quite literally. And that's where I would say like is where we're really spot on with this kind of idea of duality and equality, and how we're coming into this age is like women are now, they're elevated to a level where we demand equality, and that is the bar. And also that we demand that we give back to Mother Nature. That's really a big, big theme in what we're seeing right now, is that like, I mean, think about when they had to stop production in China and they saw blue skies. This whole idea of like, okay, Mother Nature actually needs our help, and she needs us to listen in, and she needs us to give back to her, and she just needs us, period. So that's a very big kind of symbology within the Immago and image of the Aquarian symbol of a female who has equal kind of male energy, who's giving back to the source,
Absolutely.
if you will.
And I think anyone who's listening in terms of astrology and everything else and planetary effects, I mean, the moon controls the tides. So, I mean, we're pretty much water. So to think of practically that, planets, when they do come into contact our energy per se, practically they of course they're going to affect us in emotions and the way we feel, and why we have off days and why we don't have off days. I think we look too much down at our phones instead of looking up at the sky for more answers, which brings me to my next thing on the sky, the concepts of ascension. Because again, I mean, there's many. I mean, there's religious ascension. Jesus ascending is him not dying, but going into heaven as non-physical form, but coming back, or him rising, after dying.
The resurrection.
Resurrection, yeah. So what's your definition of ascension?
Ascension to me is kind of creating, not necessarily creating, but accessing this portal within you that allows you to not only travel kind of deeper within your consciousness, or whether it be subconsciousness, but also to project that outwards. And what I'm really getting at is the fact that when we consider the ideas of ascension, we kind of think that like, oh, we're surpassing something, or we're growing out of something, or we're shedding this, or we're doing that. But for me, it really has to do with breaking the linear timeline, if you will, creating this whole kind of cycle within you, and understanding like, okay, I'm my past, present, and future self all at the same time, and I can use these energies and pull from these energies to travel anywhere I need to within this time space and manifest anything I need to. And it's definitely a lot to do with like a mental thing, but it is metaphysical because it's an energetic ascension, basically, is understanding that you are limitless within your energy fields, if that makes sense. You have the ability to vibrate at any kind of frequency that you wish, and ascending is breaking the shackles of thinking that you are limited, or you are just one thing, or you are only here now, or any of these time quantum physical constraints. You kind of just break those barriers, and you are able to manifest things a lot easier and clearer, and you have this connection to a source or a spirit that guides you through intuition and allows you to manifest any of these things. And it's very layered. Like, obviously it's very hard to explain, but
yeah,
for the most part, it's energetic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's there's so many. I mean, the closest thing kind of on the East is kind of enlightenment would be the ascension, is to become enlightened, which can simply mean full comprehension of a situation.
Hmm.
Which brings me to my next
Yeah.
point of, I read, because I've been diving in more on religious texts just to know the kind of fundamentals of their spiritualism.
Hmm.
And even a thing of, I've actually used this before of, in terms of becoming aware of an actual situation. You're driving on a freeway, someone cuts you up, you start swearing or doing whatever, and you start
Hmm.
creating a story or a dialogue of that specific person who's in that car.
Hmm.
And you imagine how many times a day you do that when someone doesn't text you back. You start creating a whole world
Yeah.
of things that don't physically exist, and that's kind of my interpretation of enlightenment, or being aware of the fact that it's not real. And then
Yeah.
if you put to maybe the person in the car who cut you up, that their wife's in the hospital, or they're about to have a baby, or
Hmm.
they're rushing to get
Yeah.
somewhere, you would act completely different if you knew the actual truth. So, but we don't. And I think that to me kind of sums up the awareness and the enlightenment and ascension. And back to your
Hmm.
vibrational level, which I love, what you said is, if something that feels bad, is harmful, is negative, that's considered to be a lower vibration for you. In
Yeah.
terms of people who don't understand the kind of high and low vibration. In the same sense, if something feels good and great and a positive effect, that is considered a higher vibration.
Hmm.
So the whole point in this show is I want people to listen and be like, oh, that's put me in a higher vibration, because I love what they're saying, and it's informational, it's educational, and I am
Yeah.
growing after this. Like me before this conversation with you is not the same as I'm growing. I'm learning. I'm learning
Yeah.
about Age of Aquarius. I'm learning more about Ascension and everything else. I want to dive a little bit on kind of the spiritual awakening, because obviously enlightenment, when I looked at enlightenment out of enlightenment, I'd be like, oh, it's a great light, something happens where
Yeah.
everything.
It
It's
just
not actually that. Yeah,
ding.
it's not actually that. It's kind of the growth process.
Yeah. It's all in the process, really. And when I think about enlightenment, I like to think I've reached it, but I also don't, because it's like the more you know you don't know
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing.
we
So
don't know
it's
shit.
yeah,
The
so it's
difference
hard
is
to put your finger on it, but I feel like that's also to the point of like being enlightened, is that knowing that you don't know shit and you might not ever know shit, and there is an unknown side, and you
yeah,
have to just deal with that you won't know.
yeah, yeah,
um and I feel like patriarchal, like capitalist thinking, and like especially conventional science like always drills in this idea of like you have to know, there's always an answer, you will know, but like there's some things you're just not meant to know,
yeah.
like you're
I,
literally not.
I think it's a great analogy. I mean, you're so right. I mean, the more aware I become, the more I don't know anything. And I think
Yeah.
that I used to be fearful of that, like life after death. I used to be scared of. I used to be scared of all these other things, but I don't know. So how can you I mean, practically, you cannot be scared of something you don't know. And I understand,
Yeah.
because people hit me up on Instagram all the time. It's like, well, how could you not be scared of the unknown? And I'm like, because I don't know.
You don't know what it is.
Yeah. So I don't understand how it could be scary, because the opposite of, I sit down with so many people, and how you live your life, for example, everything in your life is manifested, like everything.
Yeah.
It's not a separate thing. It's not this good thing happened to me, or I manifested that. It's also the bad things. It's also, your death. It's also your
Yeah.
life. It's also every single detail, the things in your room, the things in my room, the things I have around me. I know exactly who someone is based on the things they have, because those things are drawn by thoughts, emotions, beliefs,
Yeah.
everything else. Which brings me to my next point of kind of, self-awareness. And because I struggle with this question as well as, who are you? Who are we? Who am I?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'd love to put that question to you, because, you can write down your name. You're like, but that's a name on a paper.
Yeah.
Who am I?
You are given that name.
Yeah, I'm a man, but that's a gender. That's not who you are.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm 36. That's an age. That's not who you
Yeah.
are. So then you start whittling back, and you're like, wow, I really don't know.
Yeah. And I actually been asked this question before, and it was this time when I went on this random road trip with this random European man that I met in a random bar. And we were just kind of sitting on this cliff in south of France, and he's just like, so like, who are you? What are you about? And I said, I'm everything and nothing.
Mhm.
And he just didn't like, he was not standing for the answer. He's like, no, 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 like, you don't, I don't know what you mean. Like, who are you? Where are you going? Like, what's your story? Like, what are you going to become? And I'm like, I'm everything and nothing and until I'm there. But to your specific question, who am I? I just believe I'm a spirit inhabiting this vessel, and I'm here to anchor light for people. And not only for people, for the actual universe to garner or to kind of initiate this shift into the age of Aquarius, because this is such a pivotal kind of time in humanity, in the on the earth, if we if you will, for every being, not just humans, because we're all interconnected, obviously. But yeah, I'm a being that was sent here to anchor the light
Mhm.
and to make sure that this transition goes smoothly and that I can influence people in a positive way to garner this change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I
How did you stumble across like the tarot cards things? And the reason why I bring this up because my I bought my wife I guess goddess tarot cards, so every card
yeah.
was a female goddess. And she kept pulling out two cards. One was Lakshmi, my wife's Indian, so I was like,
Ah, I love Lakshmi.
yeah. So I was like, and then one was the goddess Freya. And my daughter's called Freya because we named because we kept. I
Oh,
wasn't going to call her
nice.
Lakshmi. I was like, I don't, it's a cool name, but it's
It's
not a name for a child.
fine.
You know? It's a
Middle
bit too much.
name.
Yeah. And then I kept putting the Freya card, and this is before we even knew we were going to have a kid or anything else.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, that's a great name for a child. And then obviously Freya, the actual name is the goddess of everything, love, war,
mm,
pain, everything that you could ever imagine. She's the goddess of. And when she was pregnant, we obviously they'd let you know after a certain amount of time if it's a boy or a girl. And I remember
yeah.
we read some of the results, and it was like female chromosome 0, male chromosome 0.01. And I was like, oh my god, we're gonna have a boy. And I wasn't prepared for any of that. And then the next day, new results came, and it was like, it's a girl. And I was like, oh my god,
Wow.
Freya. So I was like, it resonates deep with me, the tarot card things, and I'd love to dive a little bit on that with you, and just how you stumbled across that, your education behind it. I find it
Yeah.
so fascinating because it's pulling something completely in the now of something that potentially represents you or where you're going or everything else.
Yeah.
Um, because nothing's predetermined; everything can be changed in a moment or a flick of a switch
Hmm.
based upon your thoughts and feelings. So tarot cards, I guess, would be the now or the past or the future.
I think it's all about the intention, right?
Okay.
But I like to think of kind of tarot, the practice of it, of like the science of probability or Murphy's law kind of thing. But it's like when you pull a card, that's that's the probability of what's happening right now. And trusting that kind of intuition is really what you're placing into the cards. The power you're giving the cards is that I pulled this for a reason, and that reason is because it matters right now. And if you pull it for the future, then you pull it for a reason. It's because it matters for that time period that you're projecting into it or your intent is into it. But how I got into tarot is like a very loopy kind of process that doesn't really add up. But my aunt, so I come from a Haitian background, and my aunt always had like stacks of books on astrology, tarot, and like anything, all the woo woo, all the stuff. And I sometimes I would like read through them, or she would show me different pages, be like, oh, this is what your birthday means, or oh, this is like I Ching, or different things. Um, Throwing like random ashes or things on the floor, and like, this is how you read smoke, or this is how you read that. And that kind of got me into it a little bit, but I wasn't sold. I was just like, oh, she's just into whatever, like that's what she does. And it wasn't until I kind of got into college and was hearing about it more, and like would see different tarot readers, and I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. um, and I finally picked up a deck and started trying to learn some of the symbology, and I wasn't like practicing it very much. Like I kind of like put it aside for a couple of years. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. um, and I think about was it 3 years ago was when I like dug it up and I was like, okay, no, like I think I need to know what this is about. And I started studying some of the symbols and trying to like memorize some things. I don't have a really good memory. That's why I didn't take history in school. I took geography because I was like, dates, numbers, what are those? I can't remember symbols like that. But I tried for the life of me to just like keep at it. And I would pull for some friends and they're just like, you're spot on. You're really reading me kind of thing. And I never thought that I needed tarot cards to read people, which is the interesting thing. Like I was always that kind of person that would like look at you, hear you say like a couple words and be like, all right, this is what's going on. This is what you're about. But that would put people off because it'd be like, what do you know? Like, so the cards became this kind of like medium of like, well, if I pull these cards, maybe they'll listen to what I have to say about their energy and like believe me a little bit more. So yeah, I kind of just got into it with some friends and doing that. And then I was just encouraged by my friends. They're like, no, you should be getting into this because you're speaking a lot of truths and like there's messages here that people need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I'll try it.
I wonder if I don't know if anyone's ever done a tarot card reading on a podcast.
I don't know, actually. I'm not that maybe.
I don't think I've ever heard.
Yeah, I always see it on like lives and things like that, but I've never really heard that.
No, not on a podcast. I mean, because technically podcasts are just all audio. Obviously I use a visual component to it, but I'm wondering if we could do one.
Yeah, I'm down for
a
it.
short abbreviated version of it.
Yeah, I'm down. I can do a little past, present, future.
There we go. That would be amazing.
3-card pull, a little 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, I mean, just in terms of so people can understand tarot, I guess it would be a mixture of mine and your energy, right?
Yeah.
So you could be pulling cards for me, but they could actually be more resonant to you.
Pretty much. And like what I like to do is make sure the intention is set for the person, and I'll clear the deck and I'll like kind of just tell spirit like this is for Lou or this is for whoever I'm pulling for. But obviously my energy is on it.
Yep.
In some respects. And I have been doing like tarot, like traditional tarot, but I have been getting more into like the oracle, which is like just gives you like keywords. And I've been really loving that because it I feel like it tells more of a story and it's just like easier to read in terms of energy, at least.
Okay.
Tarot has like very heavy symbology behind it, and it's kind of like this card means this, but at least with these words I can formulate a narrative that fits the energy more than maybe what a symbol is pointing to. So yeah.
Amazing. I mean, like I almost feel like tarot cards, I mean, how long have they been around? For like eons.
Yeah.
I mean, It's funny how, when you talk about the Age of Aquarius and tarot cards and everything else, I mean, the stuff that we do now, women were like considered witches for these type of things. It's just mind-boggling to me. And, I could only, I've heard about past life regressions and other things. I haven't personally done it myself. Mm-hmm. But I can only imagine how many times we've actually lived on this earth and been reborn and reincarnated and everything. God knows what's happened. But I find it, I guess we'll find out when we're no longer in physical form.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes you can tap into that, when you really like ask your spirit or you really try to feel out things. Like, I believe that I definitely have been here before, but I wasn't here for a very long time. And spirit like woke me up. They're like, it's your turn. Come back. Come on. I was like, I don't want to. I really don't want. Like, I was actually even late coming out of the womb. Like I was just a late baby. I was supposed to happen around New Year's, and I was like January 22nd.
Oh, that is late.
Yeah. And my mom's like, is this baby trying to come out or not? I was not trying to come
because my daughter was late too. But I mean, I guess the dates of the actual birth they're so vague because they can't tell you when it's conceived or any of that. So they could be off. But I mean, the fact that is a long time off.
Yeah, they're like, this is a December baby. And I was like, end of January.
Which star sign are you?
I'm Aquarius.
Oh, that's right.
I'm an
Yeah, my bad.
Aquarius.
I'm a Capricorn. I was like, oh, January, late January. I'm December 23rd.
Okay, yeah.
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 So, and my mum's always been into like, astrology and kind of the same thing. I feel like, especially, it came from your aunt and stuff. I always feel like it's like an aunt or an uncle that would have that.
Yeah.
It's kind of the connotation. Oh, it's the aunt or it's the uncle who does that, But it's great. I mean, anyone who's looking to get into this type of stuff, the only thing it's going to do is, well, the amazing thing is bring awareness. There's awareness to every kind of daily thing, like even to a point where now I wash dishes and I'm like feeling the water running down my hands, the warmness of the water, the sound it makes when it goes down the sinkhole. And I'm like, I'm trying to live a little more deep into that. When I explain
that flow state,
that flows, yeah, and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, but that's exhausting." I'm like, actually, it's not. It actually gives you more energy to do.
Because you're conserving all the energy. Like, I hate doing this. Like there's so much energy you're pouring into just hating what you're doing. That, yeah. But that flow state, I always like stress that so much because it's meditative. It's like. It's being present. It's being the most present you could be. And when you realize that you're in the present moment, there's so much like freedom and like lightness to that. You're just like, oh, this is where I am. Instead of being in the past or projecting into the future, you're just like, I'm here.
100%. And it's even with meditation, like it's not sitting on somewhere and closing your eyes and humming. Meditation could be you sitting there watching the news and you're focused on one specific thing, when I meditate, I focus on just watching my thoughts or breathing or any of the type of. It's always kind of a focus. And even like people who are listening, playing video games, you're focused solely on that, and that is meditation. That's probably the reason why I don't watch the news anymore. I'm not consumed by outside. I'm kind of like my own now social experiment where, my circle is my circle, and I open myself up now to platforms like this and conversations with amazing people like yourself, and just to spread the word of we are insanely powerful beings and we can have everything we want just as easy as everything we don't want. So we just have to change the narrative of our own lives. But yeah, I mean, I'm super intrigued by the cards you're about to pull.
Yes. So I was kind of rubbing my hands with some selenite, a selenite stick, and it's just a good kind of clear stone that helps you cleanse any negative energy, but also stay true to yourself. It's also like a crown chakra stone, so get connected to source. And I like to kind of rub that before I'm just like, oh, my crystals. And then I got this little angel pendulum that I kind of swing over the deck so I can just make sure that I'm putting the intentions in for the reading to be for Lou.
I love it.
And then we shuffle the deck and we ask Spirit, what is the past, present, future reading for Lou? What does he need to know? What's the story? Where is he going?
Where's my money at?
Where's his money at? Lou wants to know where his money is at, Spirit. Tell him where his money is at. Where is the bag? All right, so we got 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, so they're pulled. Like that's it. That like past, present, fruit. Okay, you do it all at the same time.
Yep. From the top. So past, we have mysticism.
Okay.
And this is to do with, the unknown, tapping into more mystic, ethereal, spiritual realms. Maybe you were digging deep. You were digging deep into the unknown. And then presently we have perfection, which is really about getting right with yourself and being in perfect alignment, not only with yourself, but also with spirit, with Mother Nature, with your surroundings. And then we have service. which is about being of service to others, to your community, to your family, to yourself. So the story here might be that tapping into the unknown, and you're finding this sense of balance with the perfection. You're putting pieces together and they're adding up for you, and now you want to share them and be of service to people, just like this podcast. Basically, you want to drop the gems, share them, and help them serve the community.
That is literally my life. Literally. It's
There we
funny.
go.
I mean, because I've been pretty, people can be disappointing, and I don't like I don't like to rely on anyone. The only person who can disappoint me is myself. I'm not talking about immediate family and stuff, but even they can be a little disappointing. But in terms of, as I said, my own social experiment, so I shut myself off. This is my home, this is my castle, this is everything else, and I've managed to kind of open myself up now and being like, okay, now I'm in a position where I'm no longer anxious, I'm no longer depressed, I'm no longer stressed, these type of things. Like, I know how to deal with them and get rid of them pretty sharpishly, or allow them to flow through me. And now I'm like, well, now I know all these things, and I have this knowing of the fact that we do manifest everything in life. We are in control. We're in the control seat. Not that I wanted, the control aspect of it. So now I'm opening myself up, and conversations like this, I had someone on the podcast yesterday, and we spoke about the issues of Skid Row, but not the issues per se, because the solutions to Skid Row. The war on drugs brings more drugs. The war on guns brings more guns.
Yeah.
It's the immersion in the actual issue rather than the immersion in the solution. So now I'm opening myself up, and I actually feel great about that. Whereas before I'd be scared to, because I don't want anyone to disappoint me or anything else. And I'm on a flow, an energy flow, should I say.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So you're in alignment. You're in perfect alignment with yourself. And now, you're ready to share. You're ready to serve the community. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I feel like a lot of us came into that kind of, that narrative, if you will, through quarantine. We had that dark kind of period, traveling into the unknowns of ourselves, like, oh my God, I have to sit with my own thoughts. Like, what are these? What do I do with them? Where do I put them? And then trying to balance that and come to a place where we're like, okay, no, this is me. I'm good. I'm confident, and I'm gonna come out swinging now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for me, obviously lockdown was a blessing. Like, I was like,
same.
This is great. Like, I'm working from home now, and my whole businesses have now transitioned from working from home. My daughter runs in and out. It's like, I love it. I genuinely, and this is why I'm trying to protect where I'm at, but also open myself up. I want to touch a little bit on religion. Do you have any religious background? Is there any religious beliefs?
So I was baptized, but I don't practice Christianity. Religion has been a very mucky area for me, because it's like I've been pulled and swayed into a lot of these different spaces. Going to high school, basically, like, I moved to the Bahamas when I was 12, and I was staying with my father. So I would have like these tutors or these housekeepers, and he was like desperate to give me like this mother figure kind of thing. And these ladies would like take me to their church every Sunday. And he's like, okay, that's good. This is structure, da, da, da. And then I would go to these like youth church kind of programs. And I don't actually ever remember receiving a message that resonated. So that religion didn't, it was just kind of like, I understand what you're doing here, but it's not touching my heart, unfortunately. And then kind of later on into the game, my dad got into like this whole yoga kind of thing, but he was half-assing it. He was really half-assing. He was just like, I just go to this yoga class sometimes. I do Pilates. And I'm like, okay, like, cool. So we would go and do yoga. And he took me to this place, I think it's called Sivananda. It's like this little private island on Paradise Island in the Bahamas. That's where I was living. wish I was right there right
Yeah.
now. And we did this like retreat thing for my birthday, and we did a bunch of yoga, and they gave us this vegan food, and I spoke to like this Indian shaman who's reading my birth chart and like doing all these things, and giving me these messages like, yeah, you're going to be a really great teacher someday, or something like that. And like it just, I really resonated with the like the energy and the mindfulness that was being shared with me, and that's what got me into tapping into Buddhism. So I started to read like a lot of just Buddhist texts and like Thich Nhat Hanh, and like just getting into more kind of Buddhist principles. But I wouldn't call myself a Buddhist because I have never really gone to any temples or done any of these practices rigorously. So religion to me is kind of like I don't really resonate with any religion, but I appreciate Buddhist mindfulness the most.
Yes.
Because that keeps me like centered and grounded and obviously mindful. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand with religion. Like I'm not a religious, I'm spiritual. That's what I like to say. Like I like to tap into various spiritual elements and various teachings from different religions, but I'm not tied to any specific religion.
How do you yeah, it's funny because only now have I started. I mean, I wasn't raised religious or anything like that. Only now have I started, like, for example, I didn't want to read any of the Bibles, but I wanted to read the teachings of Jesus. So basically I got a book which is solely literally the teachings of Jesus.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I was like, I want to know these things. And even like, Jesus didn't write anything. Buddha didn't write anything. They didn't write anything back in the East back then.
Yeah.
It was kind of just, word of word kind
oracles.
of
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you start realizing they kind of all touch up on the same things.
Yeah.
It's just perspective, I guess, for back then, and kind of using it to your advantage now. I want to ask you just probably one more question, actually, because obviously your blogs and everything else, there's such a cool element to them, cultural element. How do you vision love?
Love. Wow.
Yes.
How do I envision love? As this like ever-present energy that is so big and so vast that is always accessible to tap into. I don't know if I envision it. I feel it. I feel it as this very strong vibration. And it's interesting because like I've meditated before and like I've asked spirit, like, I just want love. And like the vision that I had for it is like romantic love or partnership. But then the feeling that washes over me within that meditative state is this like inexplicable, like all-encompassing love that just brings like these tears to my eyes. And I'm like, oh, this is what love is. Like it's not this kissing, or it's not this hugging, or it's not these cuddles, or it's not what I'm envisioning as like this loving energy. It's literally just this all-encompassing, like knowing that you are a part of this oneness, and knowing that you're so loved and that there's so much love around you to tap into, that it can almost make you burst from the seams.
Yes. That's yes, you pretty much summed it up. Because I mean, we put this, you're right, there's this romantic conditioning of, from the movies and this and that, and everyone knows, in a relationship, the first year is like incredible, and then then the kind of the jealousy starts kicking in, and all these other type of insecurities which are your own, and then it kind of, I've been with my wife now 10 years, so like
beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, and we speak about everything. We're completely open, and we're growing together. There is no, any conflicting. We meditate together, we run together, we do everything together. And there's a togetherness. Even like our office, there's a desk here too, and all this stuff is hers. And so we're always every day working together. And I think that is just being okay with someone. This notion of you have to be in intense love forever, otherwise you're not enough. And I think it's about wanting to be with that someone is your ultimate best friend. You want to share the whole entire universe with them.
Hmm.
And I think that's, for me, is where love represents in manifestation of love. I think the way you summed it
Yeah,
up was beautiful, spiritual love and everything else in terms of, kissing and hugging, all that type of stuff. That's like the physicality of what it
exactly. There's so
feels.
many
So many
parts.
parts. Yeah, absolutely.
And I
And
just read Bell Hooks All About Love. That was like the trending book of the summer. Um, and she does such a great job of just explaining how multifaceted love is. But I think at the crux of it is she's basically saying like love is the kind of the will or the intention to basically love someone and grow with them and not make sure but to foster this growth towards their highest good and yours and like vice versa. So it's really like, yeah, it's that growth with somebody and loving the whole process, and not just with somebody but just loving. It could be your pet, it could be anything really, but loving the process of the growth or the transformation of what it is you're loving, and yeah, and being there for it every step of the way.
beautiful. And just to obviously touch on the music tip.
Mhm.
You've put out an album. What's next for you music wise?
Music has been like all over the place for me. I've been having difficulty tapping into like the this perfect sound for me, if that makes sense. The last album I put out was pretty much like a mixtape that I did in conjunction with producer um Andre Futrell, and we made this kind of duo group, Savoir Faire. And it was just this mixtape that was about like revolution and kind of, I would like to say the Age of Aquarius almost, because like I was really speaking on so many different facets, but it had a lot to do with just like this Black Renaissance. That was kind of the theme. Um, and now that I feel like we're actually kind of in this space of a Black Renaissance, I'm like, what do I talk about? Like sometimes I just feel like I've said it all, but I'm really working towards saying more with sound versus my actual vocabulary. And I'm looking forward to releasing maybe a project next year, but there are definitely singles on the way. That's for sure.
There we go.
Yeah.
Um, I honestly, I can't thank you enough. This has been fucking awesome.
Thank
You're an
you.
amazing, beautiful soul. Keep ascending. Keep
Yes.
awakening. That's even the right sentence. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lou. This has been a great experience. And yeah, just bouncing ideas and thoughts. I always love that. Um, yeah, and keep doing what you're doing too. This is
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you. I mean, I kind of started as I used to be a publisher at Sony ATV, or now Sony Publishing.
Mm,
And what I would do is, no one's from LA person, no one, hardly any.
true. Yeah, yeah.
So I would have these, I call it Team Lou Hang. So it would be like a ton of writers, producers, artists,
Mm,
maybe some A&Rs. And we'd all come over to my small little apartment, and then everyone would just get to know everyone. Kind of, I tried to
yeah.
create a community of people that would just, rather than me being like, you should work with this person, you should work. And it was kind of like, oh, we should actually do some things. And it became this like some amazing thing. And I would give these talks to be like, the artistry thing is this warped world of creating in pain. And because, our predecessors, artists or painters, poets, there've always been something conflicting about them, which makes them special. But
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel like you could channel into it, but you don't become it.
Mm,
And you can just create something as amazing in pain as you can in happiness too. So I was trying to bring
yeah.
that awareness to someone who's a creative, like people like yourself, who would, you don't know where it would come from. It would come from somewhere, but you'd write things, and it would be a source to channel that source and try and make it a habitual thing. It was actually really good. I
Mm.
mean, I loved it. And this is where the podcast, because I'd sit there and I'd be talking about this type of stuff and they'd be like, whoa. So I was like, oh, let me just put it in a podcast. I mean, and I enjoy it. And I get to have
Yeah.
conversations like this that I would never normally have sitting at home or being out and about or anything else in our daily lives. And it's just highly
Mhm.
educational for me. Like Age of Aquarius and Ascension and stuff is like, it's amazing.